meeting itself, we will open it to questions and to remarks and to comments from all of us. So who wants to start? We will start according to the order. We will start from here. This is the first group. בסדר? Okay. So, please go according to the order that you have here. What purposes did you choose? Why? Prioritize them. Why did you choose them? And the program. Okay.
Not too serious. No, I need the mic.
Okay. I'm sorry for not being too serious at the beginning, but since we are a nursery in the kindergarten, we started with a kind of brainstorming, and the first was our nursery teacher who works really with the smallest kids, and she said, I want the graduate to be without diapers. Okay. This was our starting point. But But what does it mean to be without diapers? It means to take responsibility for your action, to be all actions, to be able to decide, to be more adult, kind of more self-developed. So that is also what we want generally from a graduate, to take responsibility for his own action, to be able to decide. And this is the basic level, not Jewish, the basic, really. And for the Jewish level, I will ask Luzka to speak, no? Okay, the basic level, we need continuity, yes? We need, why do we do everything? Why do we teach Judaism? In the 50 years, we want other Jewish people to receive the same thoughts. That's why I think the basic is to start Jewish families, to have Jewish children, and to find his or her place in the Jewish world. I mean any place, because we have Orthodox people and less Orthodox people. Anything he should do in the Jewish life.
And in a basic way, we were also talking that it's important to have very good communication between the families and the schools from the beginning, that it will be about the confidence between them, because they have to be together, they have to cooperate together, because it's on both sides. It's not just the school or nursery or kindergarten or families, it's always together. And the confidence, it's very important for all of us that we will cooperate and talk together. And yeah, that's it.
That's it. Just a minute. I didn't. Okay. Okay. As Gafna, maybe you can translate, or somebody can translate for them whatever was said here.
Dobře, tak já budu chvilku překládat. Yeah. Okay, I can translate for you if you want to. Aha. Tak já řeknu ještě jednou česky v rychlosti, co jsem říkala, jestli můžu. Aha. Já jsem taky nepochopila.
Já jsem měla pocit, že bychom měli nahnat.
Tak to není tak důležitý.
Tak já jenom v rychlosti. Shall I say it in Czech again? Okay. My jsme se teda odrazili od faktu, že jsme židovská školka, ale i jesličky. A začali jsme takovým brainstormingem, kdy naše paní učitelka, která právě učí v jesličkách v nejmenších dětech, říkala, že chce, aby její absolvent byl bez plen. Což pro nás znamená, když se na to podíváme více obecně, že chceme, aby ten člověk byl samostatný, uměl se rozhodovat a vzít zodpovědnost za své skutky. A takový vlastně chceme, aby byl obecně absolvent jakékoliv židovské školy. To bylo v tom v obecné rovině a v židovské rovině, protože potřebujeme nějakou kontinuitu, protože chceme, aby za 2 generace tady pořád byl někdo, kdo by se ten judaismus chtěl učit, nejde o to učit, kdo by ho chtěl žít, tak potřebujeme... Já už to překládám, to, co jsem říkala, takže nemusíte to říkat. Jo. Potřebujeme, aby naši absolventi zakládali židovské rodiny a našli své místo v židovském světě, jakékoliv místo. Jo, a důležitá je komunikace mezi školou a rodinami, protože samozřejmě je třeba zdůraznit fakt, že ne všechno stojí na škole, že to, co si děti odnesou z rodiny, je také důležité.
Okay, I would like to clarify just afterwards it will be open to comments. You were asked first of all to choose a purpose, a target, and you did. Then you were asked why is it more important, and I think it's well that you try to answer. Maybe there will be questions, but it's okay. And then I didn't understand how would you like to concretely implement it pedagogically in your kindergarten or nursery? What are the actions that you would do now to do it?
I think in kindergarten it's easier than in school, actually. Because in kindergarten you don't educate them much, because you teach them to take care of themselves by themselves. Yes, to be more independent, to know the basic things, to know how to dress up, to know the rules in society. Yes, not to push other people, be friendly, and so on. So I think this is easier in kindergarten than in school or in real life, in fact.
I would like it to open it now to questions and comments, please.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that the entire, if your goal is toilet training, right? No, which is great. Then the entire program lends itself to that. What you do regularly supports the goal of toilet training.
No, it's just the starting point. Then we generalize it, and it's just, but what does it mean to be without diapers?
Right.
It means to be responsible, to be independent.
Right, so those are like the values underpinnings.
Yes.
And then there would be a specific way of teaching the kids that you would have. So I want to ask you a follow-up question or two about this, which I think is generally, might be relevant. How would you measure success? How would you know if you were successful or not? For example, would you send around a questionnaire asking the children how they feel about being toilet trained? I'm just wondering.
It's very easy to measure if they use
how would you
diapers
measure
or
it?
not.
How would you measure it?
Less diapers, yes.
So you would see whether it worked, and you would actually
Yes.
check whether the behaviors changed, right, based on the program that you ran, right? So,
For example, yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
That's-
But this was just the first level,
that's
the non-Jewish level.
I'm not sure anybody ever gets past the first level. I mean, I hope we get past the specific of the first level, but this is an incredible. I think this is an incredible metaphor for the entire thing. Phenomenal, and that's why I'm asking these
Thank you.
follow-up questions. Is I'm just curious. There are many different ways. One of the things about goal-oriented thinking and goal-oriented programming is that it's possible to measure the outcomes. Right? Now that's a very easy thing to say, but there are many different ways to measure, and it can be very complicated. And so I'm just asking, in your case, right, it would be fairly simple. I think we would all agree that the way you'd measure whether you were successful or not, right, is just to take a look, right, and see whether the kids, after a certain period of time, no longer need their diapers or not. And if they don't need their diapers, you've been successful. And if they do still need their diapers, you've been less successful. So what you're doing is you're assessing the impact of your program on their actual behaviors. Have their behaviors changed? Yes or no? Does that make sense? So no questionnaires, how do you feel about being toilet trained, but just tachlis, look and see whether it worked. That's very interesting.
Anybody else? I would like to comment about the process, which is very interesting. Usually, we have a purpose, and we try to find ma'asim, actions for that. And the meaning of the actions are inspired by the purpose. Here, it's different. First of all, I want them to be independent. I want them to go to the toilet. But you see that what we learn from you, which is extremely interesting, because I didn't think that anybody will come with such an example. Very, very minimal, and you say, this is what I want them. I want them to be without diapers. Now, it has a lot of impact, a lot of meaning on many other values. Independence, responsibility of them for themselves. We need the communication and involvement with the parents. I mean, it is just one action. And we see how, yes, what do you want?
I think there is also economical and ecological value in that.
Okay.
Yes, because diapers are expensive, so as are the tools you need for civil development until you are, let's say, independent. And then ecological, caring about nature. Yes, so you can put many.
So what I learned from it is that there's not even one action without impact and values around it. Whatever we do, it is something of a statement, and this is very important for our next process. Whatever we do, we think that ma'asim, things that we do have a lot of meaning, you know, if we do or if we don't do. So thank you very much for this wonderful example.
Thank you.
Okay, the next.
Okay, so we've been in the process of thinking about this for quite some time, also together with the Lauder Foundation and the retreats that we have with other schools. And one of our goals, which is like a true goal, like in real life as well, not only for the sake of this practice, is to educate children that will be active members of the community and who will take active role in that community, whatever it can mean, like in the very broad sense of this, of what it means. So it doesn't only mean to be active in the community as like the kehila, but in the wider community. And basically we want the kids, when they leave our school, we want them to have a place in their life for Judaism, and it can have very different, and it can mean very different things, if I'm making myself clear. Is it understandable? And why we chose this goal is very simple. We are a community school and we serve a community which is very diverse. It has very different people in it, and we don't want to, and because this is the case, we don't think it's right to say that Jews who are leaving our schools should be one kind of Jews, because that's not true about the community, and there are different people coming in, and we want to facilitate this diversity also in our school and also in their life when they leave. And we think that this is the only way our school makes sense in the Jewish world in Prague. And the actions that we think we should take, or we are already taking, and we think we should develop them, is that we will give a chance to our children to meet other Jewish people which represent the variety of Judaism, and they will be different kinds of people in the Jewish sense, which, like in the sense that there will be Orthodox and secular and Reform or whatever, but also they will have they will be people for whom Judaism will play different roles in their life, and also there will be interesting people with, for example, very little Judaism in them. So basically that we will introduce them to the variety of what it can mean for somebody to be Jewish. And also that we will place them in these different situations so that they can live through them themselves. Also, we think that it's very important that the children themselves take responsibility for what is happening in the school, in the Jewish events, and also in general events in the school. So they already do take part in organizing some of the events, or they organize the events themselves. And then the third thing that is very difficult to measure, but which we think is very important, and we work on it very hard, is that we want to create an atmosphere in the school which is very friendly, in which the children feel well, which means that we create a school community, which then tells the kids that to be in a Jewish place is a very good thing where to be. Basically that they will take this good feeling with them also when they leave.
Anybody wants to comment about that? Josh.
Can I guess what you will say?
Well, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the first group, which is how do you measure whether you're successful or not?
That's what I thought that you would ask. It's very difficult to measure.
Why?
Because it's something that, first of all, there can be different outcomes, and therefore success can be different things. And we talked about it before together, so I'll just say the examples that I gave to Josh when he asked me the first time, how would I measure whether I have achieved this goal. It means that if somebody from our graduates becomes a rabbi, that's a good result. If he becomes complete agnostic and he is interested in the policy of the state of Israel, that's also fine. If it's somebody who will marry Jewish, that's fine. If it's somebody who doesn't marry Jewish and then is active and if it's somebody who takes action in some kind of social work that the Jewish community does, that's also fine. If it's somebody, no, but it's seriously, but we have to face the reality. It's so going to.
Can I ask the question a different way? Can you describe failure?
Failure, somebody who will leave the school and who will not want to be in touch with Judaism whatsoever.
I don't agree. I'm sorry, but I think it's not so difficult to measure it, because if there will be in 30 years a Jewish community in Prague, I think not only the school, but mainly the school was successful. If not, then not only school, but mainly school worked wrong.
And I think I will be, I'm also as somebody who is sitting at the entrance exam, I'm always much happier to accept a child who comes from a mixed marriage where the mother is not Jewish and the father is Jewish when the family is an active Jewish family. It's very nice if a halachic child comes. I'm always happy, and I know I have the responsibility as the Jewish teacher to take care of this child. But I think it makes much more sense when I already see the interest in the family, to cater for that child, because I think we can't play the halacha game all the time. It's really not, and not that it's not relevant, but we live in a world where we have to face the reality where we are.
So if I can just remark, because I'd like to return to this at the end, on the difference between group number 1 and group number 2, not in any way in an ideological sense, because they were talking about changing diapers. But rather in a systems sense. Here was a very clear assertion of values, right, which happens to be shared by most of society. But it is intrusive. If I chose to wear diapers, right, and I could afford to wear diapers, you might not want to spend time with me, but I wouldn't have to run all the time to the toilet and interrupt dinner and so on. You had a very clear, no, I'm being very serious here. You had a very clear assertion of values, a very clear set of outcomes that you were aiming for, and a very clear ability to measure that. And group number 2, and again, this is not a critique and it's not a defense, I just want to point out the difference, because there are advantages and disadvantages to different ways of doing things. Group number 2, the way Gafna presented it, had a much, much more open and much, much broader approach to values, right, to an articulation of values, to an articulation of outcomes, right, which is attractive. There's a real attraction to that, right? No one should tell someone else whether they should do something, right? But then there's a question, which is then how do you know what it is that you're trying to do? And how do you measure whether you've done it or not? And there's a lot of space between group number 1 and group number 2 on this. And so I think this is something interesting, and I'd like to return to that again in our conclusion, just to reflect on that. But try, when we listen to these things, I think it's interesting to think of them not just in terms of the specific point that's being raised, because this wasn't just about diapers, and that wasn't just about pluralism. No one here has an objection, presumably, to the notion that children should be toilet trained, right? And no one here, presumably, has an objection to the notion of pluralism. The question is, how do we deal with the pros and cons of taking one particular perspective or another, a clearer one or a broader one, because there are disadvantages and advantages to each.
And I think, if I may add one thing, because I know, like from my very childhood, what kind of community I live in, and I think that it's actually true about many other Central or Eastern European communities, that they are very diverse and people make choices that are not necessarily halachic choices or choices that are that always like go along what we think is right in Judaism, even though I don't think that there is like one right in Judaism. But when Rabbi Meyer was so angry about the mixed marriage, basically what I think is very important, and I can see that many people actually suffering from that, not only here but also in other places in the world, that they see themselves as failures when they make these choices. For example, I wasn't able to meet a Jewish partner. I married non-Jewish, and therefore I'm a failure. And I don't think that's true, because I think it's like you did something that from the point of halacha is questionable or is not the desired thing to do, but you are in a situation which also still has a Jewish potential. So that's why I think it's a great advantage to have such a goal, because then we can see our students as successes, even though they are very diverse, and even though they make choices we don't approve of. And I think that's it's a very, very, but like at least for us, I think it's a very important.
So I took the microphone again because Gavna, the point that I'm trying to make is that it's important when we think about this in a way that isn't issue specific, to try and step out a little bit and think about the modes of thought or the way we approach situations and their benefits and disadvantages. So the passion of your particular perspective on this particular issue is clear. We hear it. Probably everyone who's met you before knows it. That's not the point. The question is, if that's the way as a leader and as an educator you're going to operate an institution, what are the benefits of that and what are the disadvantages of that? Right? And so there are benefits and there are disadvantages. It's not about halacha and it's not about diapers. It's about whether one articulates a clear position or whether one chooses not to for legitimate reasons, either way. And what are the benefits and disadvantages of doing that? And I think that's a relevant and valuable takeaway for everybody, irrespective of what city you're from, what kind of program you're running, and whether we're talking about diapers or we're talking about, specific observances of Judaism. So I think it's important for us not to turn this into a plea for toilet training or a plea for non-halachic pluralistic behavior. That's not the point. The point is, how do we assess what it is that we're trying to do, right? How comfortable are we with articulating a specific goal, right? If we're not comfortable with articulating a specific goal, what are we conveying to people, right? How can we measure whether we've conveyed anything, et cetera, et cetera.
Before that, I would like to comment about the practicality of implementation, this idea. I wouldn't like to enter into the question of the purpose. This is already done by Josh. But I would like you to focus when you want to implement it, because I understand that this is a practical program that anyhow you are doing in your school. So the question when we implement a program is, what is the impact and what does it have to do with students, with teachers, with the curriculum, with the parents, extracurricular activities, etc. And these questions, if you will relate to them, you will find ways to measure it as well. So, for instance, if we are doing whatever, because for sure there is a difference between a school that has this attitude and, I don't know, another school which is ultra-Orthodox. Now, what is the difference? It's not always by the text that they are studying. This framework is always, you have a classroom and a teacher, etc. The question is, how do I, when I want to introduce a purpose, what is the reflection, what change, what is the reflection that I do? Do my relationship with the parents change? Are there some contents? Do I teach differently? How do I bring this into reality in regard to the materials, to the students, to maybe to the subject matter that I decide to introduce during the year, the calendar year? These are things that can be measurable and planned because it is time. If you give time to something, you focus on it. And these are things for all of us to remember when we plan a program. Thank you. If anybody, do you have a comment about it? Okay, so this is the next group.
Okay. It's very interesting that we are the level in between the first nursery and the high school, and we have completely different goals than they. So,
what are you? What the common denominator of your group? You teachers
elementary school and 3 years to 11, age of kindergarten, and the elementary school, the first 5 grades. We chose that is a goal that our children, when they are 11, when they leave the elementary school, live Jewish holidays in a natural way. In the time of Hanukkah, it's automatic for them, it's natural that they celebrate Hanukkah. In the period of Pesach, they celebrate Pesach, and it's natural for them. They don't ask, there's no question, there's no doubt. And the second sub-goal is they have the knowledge to do that. They have the basic knowledge that is appropriate for their age to do that. We understood our task to make a concrete, a specific program for that. So we made up a specific activity that we don't do yet, and that's Shabbat outside of Prague. I know that Shabbat is probably not included in holidays, but that's what we made up. And
one Shabbat?
One Shabbat, like a prolonged weekend. We thought maybe from Thursday evening, so that on Friday we can bake the challah, we can prepare the tables, we can prepare the Shabbat, do some not Shabbat activities. On Shabbat, some Shabbat activities. On Sunday, something else. We don't know in detail, but to make it an experience for the children. So that Shabbat is not, you cannot do that, you cannot do that, you cannot do that, but to stress the positive thing. We do 1 week with the children, but without parents. What we thought now is with families, to make it a communal thing, to take the children from a specific age, take them together, but take them to this outside Prague somewhere, but together with the families. Sing, eat. I understand you will ask us how we measure it, how we measure our success, okay? I think the best measure is do it next year and see who comes, if they come again. Any other questions?
the feedback is also kind of measure. Feedback not only from the students or children, but also from the parents.
Okay, any comment about it? I have a question. When I define a purpose that I would like, for instance, children to live naturally something for a long time, for all their life. I mean, let them celebrate all the Chagim. It will be natural. They will learn something. Now, I would like to introduce, and when I look at the program, first of all, there is something that it is my fault. I didn't ask you, and this is something for you to think about. How is it integrated in whatever you already have? Because we do not start from scratch. There is a school, there are a lot of things. But let's say this is the main thing that we focus on. If I want to come to an outcome of a regular life, of routine, and I decide to present it or to make only once a year or once for the whole study, for the whole years of study, there is a kind of a tension between those two purposes. You understand me? Did I make myself clear? So the question is it a routine of the school to celebrate, to give knowledge, to do something, and this is an addition, or this is the main thing?
I feel that we already do a lot of things. And another thing that we would have to do, like you say, every week or like a routine, would be too much. That's why what we were thinking about was once an activity that you do just once, maybe regularly, but regularly meaning twice a year or once a year, not more. I feel we do a lot, and I felt that what you've wanted from us is to make one activity. That's what I understood.
No, it's fine. I just wanted to see the context, which I missed, but it's okay. Thank you. Anybody else who wants to comment? Josh? Okay. Fine. The next group.
So our goal is to...
What is the common denominator of your group?
Yeah, we have like preschool kids. Yeah. Is to wake up and maybe cherish in children the interest for Judaism, and also to bring their parents through the kids. So yeah, we would like the kids to enjoy our activities and to make the parents come as well. Maybe we thought we could try to give some small tasks to the parents so they would feel obliged to come as well. That's it. And how we measure, it's because they come and because they return on a regular basis.
So just a reflection, I think that's excellent. In other words, you have clear goals, which is you said you want children to cherish the experience, and presumably if they don't, the likelihood that they will come is less, and you want parents to come as well. So you're talking about turning up, people being there. So that's what you'll essentially measure. In other words, you want to know. I think an interesting thing, and that's a very, very important and very valuable performance measurement criteria, is whether people come. So for example, you can know if a school is good if parents choose to send their kids there. You can know if a program is exciting if children continue to attend. And that's excellent. There is a piece of this which steps beyond that, which is worth thinking about, which is not self-referential. Right? In other words, when you graduate your children, when you're no longer taking care of them in the context of whatever this program is, whether you're finished with them at age 3 or age 6 or age 18, whatever it is, what's the after game? In other words, what happens after? And I think it's interesting also to think about when you're aspirational, right? Is what lasting effect, and I'm sure you have that. But I think I'm sure you have that. It looks to me like you know exactly what you want to do, but it's important to try and do both of those things. In other words, think about self-referential measurement criteria, right? They're coming back, right? But also to have a sense of when they're done, right? For whatever reason, because they move away from your city or because they've graduated from this program or whatever the reasons are, what impact does it have and how can you see it?
Yeah, actually, we thought it would be nice if the kids, when they grow up, will be able to do these things that we are doing now for other kids. So the continuity.
Just a minute, very nice. I would like to ask something. When we want to make activities, whatever we are doing it anyhow at school, when we want them to be more enjoyable, can all of you, I mean, this is a question to everybody, can we think of what is the difference between an activity which is not enjoyable and activity which is enjoyable? What do we need to add? What do we need to do that an activity will be joyful? What makes it joyful? What with children? Yeah.
Well, actually, this is a very hard question because sometimes I think, for example, I have prepared very nice things, but they didn't enjoy it that much. And I cannot tell it, like, it's just, you have to try.
Yeah. There are some elements that we can learn that make it enjoyable. First of all, if they go through an experience, not a lecture. They are active, they are more active. So this is, for instance, one element which everybody, us as well, we like to be active, to do something and to learn by ourselves. And there are other informal methods that can be used, informal education, in order to make it more like an experience than like a frontal. But this is just for everybody, a way of being more involved. Thank you.
So we focused on the children age of 4 until like 18, and our main goal is to have the children which will be like moral and which still will have some interest about the education in general, but also in the Jewish history, religion. And what is important for us, that the knowledge which they get will be able to practice in the real life. And we think that when we have such personalities, then these children will be in the life, in the future, happy and also more competent. And also like more participated. And the last point, co to bylo? Jasné. And how we can reach it is by the interesting programs for audience. We focus on the collective activities, and we want to work or do it as adventure, team building, creative education, and also like education by the experiences. Yeah, I think that's it.
Any questions? For me, first of all, it is very worthy purpose. I mean, it's something that all of us would like to educate for moral, but I couldn't see the concrete point, if you can explain to me, because you spoke about we would like them to be more moral, and that all the knowledge that we will give them will be useful in their life, right? And if there is anything that I missed, please correct me. And that they will be very happy. Now, all this for me is like a wish list. And I don't know how to do it. I mean, and not only that, it's very general. I can think of almost 90% of all schools in the world giving that purpose. And you can now tell me. You don't need to express it in exact words. But how do you feel as in Jewish education that you can achieve these things? Because we are talking about Jewish education and not general, everybody. So, can you say a word about it? That it will be more focused and concrete, not like. This is like the general expectations from education as per se.
I think that we wanna deal with Jewish knowledge and the life, so that the kids which the knowledge which they get from us, they will able to use in the real life, and also will able to share this Yiddishkeit with also other friends.
So you will give them like tools or you will skills for them to share it and to be able to articulate it to others. This is what you mean?
Yes,
okay.
And also we want to do the education for them more attractive. Because if the kids enjoy the education, then they can easily also go inside of the Judaism.
Thank you. I think now I understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Thank you.
So we were thinking about two goals. First, there is a social empathy, which is important for our children. We have children at the age from 3 till 7 in state kindergarten. So the social empathy, which is important and creates values and help them to build up maybe their own identities. And rituals are very important in connection with that. The second goal is positive relation to, let's call it Yiddishkeit. I mean, to live being a Jew. I don't think Judaism as an object of studies. For we think that it's important for their Jewish lives and their own world, for each of them. We have chosen these goals for, we think that this age and prostředí, pomozte mi, prostředí, jak se řekne, and thanks, is suitable just for these goals we have chosen. And the third, daily life with Jewish calendar and holidays is highly important, and it helps them to build their world and attitudes and values, as it was mentioned. Examples, we celebrate Shabbos each Friday with children, even before lunchtime, to show how it is, how it can be. For in some families it is regularly, and in some families it doesn't exist at all. And the second example for now was the Purim. So we wanted each girl get a chance to feel that she can be brave Esther, and each boy can get a chance to feel that he can become wise Mordechai. And if it's repeat 3 times, I mean 3 years for each child, we hope, we think and we hope that it goes with him, it goes with her. And I think it's all what we can do each year and each day. Once again, even sometimes we think that we are not successful.
Thank you. I think that we learned here something which usually when we do workshops, we forget. And this is the repetition, the strength and the importance of repetition. Usually when we create a program, we try to do something new, something outstanding, once a year, etc. And here, the stress is on the repetition and the power of repetition. Each year, again and again, there is poem. Each year we decide that this value is important for us and we continue. So I think we have to take it into our consideration when we build a program to strengthen those repetitive and very powerful elements. Thank you very much. Okay. I would like to hear from you your comments, if you have, about what did you get, if at all. I mean, I'm open to any criticism and any comments during this workshop. Because it was a final workshop, not according to what I planned, but you know as teachers that not whatever we plan is exactly what we do at the end, because of time, because of many other elements. But I would like to get your comments, and we all will learn from how did you feel that you learned something, or did you feel that you didn't learn at all, or what did you feel about this workshop?
For me personally, it was very inspiring because sometimes in Bratislava I feel isolated. That's number one. I don't have much confrontation. We do think about programs, but I do feel that I, for example, always do the same little bit. And I really enjoyed them stories which you brought in, both whether it was Kafka, whether it was really, I don't think I had anything like this in the past. So it was very inspiring and original. So I really, number one, it answered my need not to be isolated and to come into some confrontation. And number two, it gave me very good and new and philosophical ideas. I really enjoyed it, and I was concentrated all the time, which is a sign that I was in it, because I would otherwise switch off. And I can say that I was listening. So that's great, thank you.
Don't have other questions for me. Let's move Josh.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'd actually like, if we can, to try, we have 40 minutes left. I'd like to try, if we can, to distill a number of important points out of the discussion that we just had, then possibly for a moment return to the question that Miriam posed, which I will pose again but with a slightly different framing, and then offer you one or two final concluding thoughts. So in listening to the things that were going on around the room, I would identify three different tensions, conflicts, not conflicts like conflicts, but conflicts between two different important points or values that need to be navigated. And these came up in different ways. So the first one that struck me was the difference which came out on the issue of collective versus individual. Now on each of these I'm going to try and present what I mean and where I saw it coming from. Then if you'd like to offer some thoughts, and then after all three, I'd like to give you a kind of a personal reflection on each of these. So this came up for me very powerfully in the conversation between Gafna and Peter about measuring performance, in which Gafna was very much focused on the individual, very individual driven. And Peter said, listen, there's a simple performance measurement criterion, which is there going to be a community or isn't there going to be a community? Now, from the perspective of an individual, that may matter or it may not. From the perspective of what's good for a particular individual, that may matter and it may not. Right? And so it's interesting to think about how is it that we see this, because as educators, we clearly have a responsibility for each and every individual. It's a very, very profound Jewish value. Chanoch lena'ar lefi darko. Educate each child based on their own particular needs and ways. That's very much the expression of the individual. On the other hand, somebody pays us, right? We're working for communities usually or institutions, right? We have programs. Even if those programs aren't directly related to a particular community per se, still a complete atomization into individuals would mean that our program wouldn't exist. So it's kind of like organizational suicide if we're only focused on the individual. And so there's a tension here between, are we focused when we think about what we're trying to do? Are we focused on a collective? Are we focused on a people? Right? Or are we focused on persons, individuals? Which is it? And how do we navigate between these two different things? That's one. Any thoughts about that? Does that come up at all in what you do or what you think about? Consciously or perhaps less consciously and now more consciously? It is a frame that's useful to reflect on. So when you're busy having an argument with your colleagues about whether you should do this or that, right? It's very rare. It's very rare that we have a situation, for example, like toilet training, where it's fairly clear that it's in the interest of the individual and the collective, right? To get it right. Very often we have a tension. We have a tension. And so articulating a particular outcome, a behavior might be very good for the community, but it might be difficult for individuals. Allowing individuals to express themselves in each way that they so choose might be very good for individuals, but might be somewhat damaging to the collective. And so navigating this is kind of issue number one. Issue number two, and this came up also twice. Normative versus cognitive. This should interest us as educators greatly. Normative versus cognitive. Are we interested in what people do, or are we interested in what people know? So I heard Katka say that she's interested in living, not Judaism, not as an object of studies, but as something lived. That's an argument for the normative. That's an argument for the normative. Here I heard the people from the elementary school talking about both, but interestingly enough, talking about the cognitive as a support for the normative. So the goal is to live Jewish holidays in a natural way, and it is necessary to provide the cognitive support for that by making sure that we actually know what we're talking about. That will help it be natural. But there's a question here. I mean, I ask you, schools, not our schools, but generally schools, the education system, is it set up to be primarily a cognitive-driven system or a normative-driven system? What do you think? Cognitive. What do we measure? Knowledge. What are our exit examinations about? Knowledge, right? We all operate in an environment in which education is understood as a cognitive-driven system. The goal of education, right? Part of the goal of education, probably in the way we understand it in Western society, is it's a babysitting service for kids, because if they were home all day, they drive us crazy. So we have to park them somewhere. But while they're parked there, our aspiration for what they do when they're there is they should learn stuff. They should know lots of stuff, more stuff. And schools differentiate themselves. There's a sciences school, there's an arts school, there's a music school, there's different. This is all cognitive driven, right? But there is, interestingly enough, there is this tension. And especially when we get to the area of Jewish education, there's a tension between what are we trying to do here? Are we aiming at the normative or are we aiming at the cognitive? And how do we tie these things together and how do we navigate through that? Any thoughts about that?
Sorry, I didn't get it. Did you say narrative?
Normative, norms. It means the way we behave, behaviors.
But I thought that cognitive, an opposition to cognitive, is what we learn by feeling and by emotions. Normative is something what is normal. I don't want to, when I told that, sorry. When
I'm learning.
I was talking about empathy and feeling, I thought that through that children are learning, even not knowing that it's cognitive or not, they are learning it.
So we're going to return to this on my personal reflection.
And so I didn't thought that we shouldn't be interested in Judaism. I only thought that some parents are giving speeches about Judaism, but they do not follow it behaving.
Right. So we're not here. I'm not proposing a specific set of psychologically driven pedagogic terms that should become used. I'm pointing out a difference between a focus, a forward focus, on are we interested in behaviors primarily, in a normative approach, are we interested in knowledge particularly, in a cognitive approach. Right, and then the third one, this is predictable, I left it for last because you were likely to guess it, is my absolute fascination with the argument between the toilet trainers and the pluralists over here. Right? So the toilet training group, right, in their particular issue, we did not hear the slightest whiff of pluralism. Right? You have a very clear position on this, don't you? You do. Why? Why is your position so clear? There wasn't a trace of insecurity or lack of clarity about the fact that you believe, psychologically and apparently ecologically too, that it is absolutely of value that kids start going to the toilet by themselves instead of making in their diapers. Why? Where does that come from?
As I mentioned at the beginning, it wasn't completely serious. It was just the brainstorming.
I'm being very serious.
And we took it as a metaphor for everything else.
So continue,
which could be done.
Treat it as a metaphor and continue. Please answer my question. Why do you feel confident about that?
Because, well, I just have to say that we weren't sure if we talk only about our school or generally. Now we know that we are talking only about our school. So for nursery children at 3 years old or when they finish at 6 years old, it's enough to, not enough, but it's important to be responsible, to be able to decide, to be able to learn to take care of oneself and of each other too. So,
I mean, I don't want to play this too far. In other words, I could say I choose not. I change someone else's diaper, but I choose not to change my own. That's my prerogative. My point is not about the diaper example specifically. It's the fact that probably the reason why this whole conversation is funny is because we all agree. We all agree, right? Everybody in this room, we're all supporting each other in this articulation of values. We all agree. Hypothetically, if we were anthropologists, right, we might come across a completely different society, that would be bizarre, but hypothetically, right, that might think that the notion of controlling your movements and determining where you make them and doing them in a sanitary place and so on and so forth is kind of weird, and you just kind of, you know, do what you do wherever you are and what you do. We don't think that way. That's not how we operate at all. It wouldn't work, not with our clothes and not with our lifestyles. It's just not at all. And so when I ask you the question, where do you come off imposing your values, right, on everyone, right, it's a crazy